I built a multi-million-dollar construction business from the ground up, raised 4 children, and believed I had the perfect marriage. But everything changed when I came across my wife's open laptop and discovered she'd been living a double life for 6 months. When I confronted her, she told me I was overreacting. That night, while she slept, I silently packed my bags. By morning, I was gone. What followed shattered her world and completely transformed mine. My name is Daniel Kane. I'm 45, and I once thought I had everything under control. 22 years ago, I founded Kane Construction with nothing but an old pickup truck and my father's toolbox. Today, we are one of the most trusted home renovation businesses in northern Michigan. Sandra and I built this life together. We have 4 children. Ellie, 18, just started at Michigan State. Asher, 16, is an athlete, with football scouts already reaching out. Then there's Camila, 13, and Henry, 11. We adopted them 4 years ago when their grandmother could no longer care for them. They arrived at our doorstep scared, but quickly became as much a part of our family as Ellie and Asher. Sandra works as the office manager at Dr. Peterson's dental practice downtown. She's always been the one who keeps everything organized, from the family calendar to making sure everyone's where they need to be. At least, that's who she used to be. The first thing I noticed was her phone. Sandra had always been casual about it, leaving it on the counter while she cooked. But about 6 months ago, things changed. Suddenly, it was always in her hand or back pocket. She'd step away to check emails and disappear for 20 minutes at a time. Then came the late nights. Sandra claimed Dr. Peterson needed her to stay late to work on the computer system, but when I drove by the office after picking up Henry from baseball practice, the parking lot was empty and the lights were off. When I questioned her about it later that night, she said, "Oh, we finished early," but there were no grocery bags or receipts to back up her story. The distance between us grew from there. Sandra used to wait for me when I worked late, curling up on the couch with a book. Now, by the time I got home, she was already asleep, turned away from my side of the bed. Our conversations became purely functional. Henry needs new cleats. Ellie's tuition is due. We operated like business partners, not like the husband and wife who once couldn't keep their hands off each other. The tipping point came 3 weeks ago. It was a Tuesday evening, and I had gotten home early from Traverse City. Sandra's car was in the driveway, but the house was unusually quiet. I found her in the home office, absorbed in whatever was on her laptop. "Hey, babe," I said, placing my hand on her shoulder. Sandra jumped like I'd shocked her, slamming the laptop shut so fast I thought she might break it. "God, Daniel, you scared me," she said, pressing her hand to her chest. Her face was flushed, and there was something in her eyes I'd never seen before, guilt. "Sorry," I said, stepping back. "What are you working on?" "Just some scheduling for the office," she replied, avoiding my gaze. "Dr. Peterson wants to reorganize the appointment system." That night, as Sandra slept beside me, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, struggling to shake the feeling that my wife was turning into a stranger. The next morning, I woke up before my alarm. Sandra was already gone, her side of the bed cold, and the coffee mug she used to leave for me was missing from the counter. She used to make enough coffee for both of us, leaving mine with a note. Not anymore. I dropped Henry off at school and went to Dr. Peterson's office, not to confront anyone, just to get a sense of what was going on. The receptionist, a sweet older woman named Betty, greeted me with a smile. "Daniel Kane, how nice to see you." Betty said, "Are you here for Sandra?" "Actually, I was hoping to schedule a cleaning," I replied. "Sandra mentioned you were busy with a new computer system." "New computer system?" Betty said, looking puzzled. "We've been using the same software for 3 years. Works just fine." My chest tightened. "Oh, maybe I misunderstood." "Sandra's been staying late for some transition work," I added. "Sandra usually leaves right at 5, Betty said. "Dr. Peterson prefers we keep regular hours. The only person who stays late is our hygienist, Monica, but that's only on Thursdays for emergency cleanings." I thanked Betty and walked back to my truck, my hands trembling as I started the engine. 22 years of marriage, and Sandra had never lied to me, not about anything important. Sure, she might have stretched the truth about how much she spent on new shoes or how much wine she had at book club, but this was different. This was a deliberate lie. Later that day, I did something I never thought I would do. I drove past the office at 5:15 p.m. Sandra's car was gone, just like Betty said it would be. So where was she spending those extra hours? When I got home, Camila was sitting at the kitchen table, struggling with her algebra homework. My little girl looked frustrated, her notebook littered with eraser shavings. Need help, sweetheart? I asked, sitting beside her. I don't understand any of this, Camila said, pushing the book away. Mom usually helps me, but she's been so busy lately. Busy with what? I asked, trying to keep my voice calm. Camila shrugged. Stuff, I guess. She takes a lot of calls now. Sometimes she speaks so quietly, like it's a secret. Even our 13-year-old has noticed. I helped Camila with her math, but my mind was somewhere else. During dinner, I kept a close eye on Sandra. She seemed fine, asking the kids about their day, reminding Asher about his football checkup, and discussing Ellie's upcoming midterms. But when her phone buzzed, she glanced at it quickly, then flipped it over without checking the message. Aren't you going to look at that? I asked. It's probably just Dr. Peterson, Sandra said. I'll check it later. After the kids went to bed, I took another approach. Sandra, is everything okay between us? I asked while we were getting ready for bed. She paused while brushing her teeth. What do you mean? I feel like we're just passing ships lately, I said. You're working late, I'm tied up with projects, and we barely talk anymore. Sandra rinsed and faced me. We're talking now. She sighed and sat on the edge of the bed. Daniel, we've been married for 22 years. We have 4 kids, a business, a mortgage. This is what real life looks like. We can't stay newlyweds forever. I'm not asking to be newlyweds, I said. I'm just asking for honesty. What does that mean? Sandra's voice grew sharp. Nothing, I said, backing off. Forget I said anything. But I couldn't forget, and I had a feeling things were about to get worse. I needed solid evidence. Saturday morning, Sandra said she was going grocery shopping, something that usually took her an hour. Keep an eye on Henry while I'm gone, Sandra called out. He's supposed to be cleaning his room, but you know how it is. Sure, I replied, my heart racing. The moment her car was out of sight, I walked toward her laptop on the kitchen counter. It was a mistake she'd never made before. My hands were shaking as I approached the screen. Her email inbox displayed dozens of messages from Colin Reed. The subject lines made my blood run cold. Missing you already. Can't wait for tonight. You look beautiful today. I clicked on the most recent one. Sandra, last night was incredible. What we have is real. I've never felt this way about anyone. The way you looked at me. I can't stop thinking about it. I meant what I said about our future together. I love you. 6 months of betrayal. I scrolled through more emails, each one a knife to my chest. One from Sandra made me sit down. Colin, I think Daniel suspects something. He's asking about my schedule. We need to be careful. Maybe we should take a break until things calm down. Colin replied, I'm not giving you up. We'll figure this out. You deserve to be happy. You deserve someone who appreciates you. A car door slammed. I closed the laptop just as Sandra walked in with grocery bags, humming like nothing was wrong. How was shopping? I asked, my voice steady. Fine, Sandra replied without looking at me. They were out of Henry's cereal. He'll probably complain. I watched her put away the groceries. This woman I'd loved for 22 years, the mother of my children, and yet, it felt like I was staring at a stranger. That evening, after the kids went to bed, I couldn't wait any longer. Sandra, we need to talk about Colin Reed. Her face turned white. She stared at me, shocked, as her mind raced to figure out how much I knew. I don't know what you're talking about, Sandra said, but her voice lacked conviction. Don't lie anymore, I said firmly. I've seen the emails, the hotel visits, everything. Her facade crumbled. She buried her face in her hands and started crying. It's not what you think, Sandra sobbed. It just happened. I never planned this. How long? I asked. 6 months, she whispered. 6 months of lies. When were you going to tell me? I asked. Sandra looked up with red eyes. You're overreacting, Daniel. It doesn't mean anything. I felt so alone. You're always working. Colin makes me feel alive again. I'm overreacting? I stared in disbelief. Yes, Sandra said, standing taller. You're making this bigger than it is. This doesn't have to destroy our family. Even caught red-handed, she was minimizing her betrayal and making me the villain. That night, while Sandra slept peacefully, I made my decision. At 4:30 a.m., I quietly packed 2 duffel bags with clothes and documents. I left a note, staying at Vernon's. The kids can reach me on my cell. By morning, I was gone. Vernon's guest room smelled of coffee and sawdust. My brother made breakfast, pretending everything was normal. You did the right thing, Vernon said, setting coffee before me. Dad always said a man knows when to walk away. My phone buzzed constantly. First, Sandra's denial. This is ridiculous. Come home. Then, anger. You're abandoning your family. Finally, bargaining. I'll end it with Colin. We can go to counseling. Too late. At noon, Ellie called. Dad, where are you? Mom's crying. Henry's confused. Camila won't leave her room. My heart broke. I'm at Uncle Vernon's, sweetheart. Mom and I have problems, but this isn't about you kids. Are you getting divorced? Ellie asked. I don't know yet, but we both love you more than anything. I called our lawyer, Patricia Walsh. With 4 kids, 2 adopted, we need to proceed carefully, Patricia said. Adoption laws can be complicated in custody situations. Losing Camila and Henry terrified me. What about the business? I asked. Since Sandra handles the finances, she'll claim significant entitlement. We'll audit everything, Patricia assured me. That evening, Vernon convinced me to call Sandra. We need to discuss the kids. Daniel, please come home, Sandra begged. This is tearing our family apart. People make mistakes. I didn't walk out on my family, I said with conviction. I walked away from a lie. Sandra hung up, but for the first time in months, I felt clarity. 3 days into my stay at Vernon's, I realized I needed more than just emotional distance from Sandra. I needed hard proof for what was coming next. Patricia Walsh had been clear. Custody battles involving adopted children could get messy, and I needed every advantage I could get. You planning to fight this properly? Vernon asked over our morning coffee. Because if you are, you better start getting serious about documentation. He was right. I called a private investigator, Mike Torres, who specialized in marital cases. We met that afternoon at a diner outside of town. Daniel, I've been doing this for 15 years, Mike said, sliding a contract across the table. Your wife's been sloppy. Hotel receipts, restaurant charges, credit card trails. If they've been meeting regularly, there's evidence. What about the business finances? I asked. She handles all our accounts. That's where things get interesting, Mike replied. If she's been using marital assets to fund this affair, that's financial misconduct. Courts don't take kindly to that, especially in custody cases. I signed the contract and handed him a retainer check. 2 days later, Mike called with preliminary findings. Your wife's been busy, he said. Hotel charges twice a week for 3 months. Always the same place, the Marriott downtown. Credit card shows expensive dinners, jewelry purchases at Tiffany's. None of this matches her dental office salary. My stomach sank. She's been buying him gifts. Looks that way. There's more. She opened a separate bank account last month. Been transferring money from your business accounts regularly. That evening, Asher called. My 16-year-old son rarely showed emotion, but his voice was tight with anger. Dad, I found something, Asher said. Mom's been lying to all of us. I heard her on the phone with someone named Colin. She told him you were just being dramatic and that everything would blow over soon. Son, I appreciate you telling me, but don't. No, Dad, Asher interrupted. She's wrong. You're not being dramatic. She's the one who messed up our family. After hanging up, I sat in Vernon's living room, feeling both vindicated and heartbroken. Even my teenage son could see what Sandra refused to acknowledge. Her actions had consequences beyond her own selfish desires. The next morning, Patricia called with updates on legal strategy. Daniel, the evidence Mike's gathering is solid. Sandra's financial misconduct gives us leverage, especially regarding the children's college funds. She's been accessing college funds. My voice rose. She's been stealing from our kids' education money. It appears so. We're talking about nearly $40,000 over 6 months. That's going to play very poorly in family court. It hit me then that Sandra's betrayal was deeper than just adultery. She'd been systematically dismantling our family's financial security to fund her affair. The woman I trusted with our children's futures had been gambling it all away for stolen moments with a younger man. That night, I made a decision. This wasn't just about my wounded pride anymore. This was about protecting my children from a mother who'd proven she'd sacrificed their well-being for her own selfish desires. The hardest part of this nightmare wasn't Sandra's betrayal. It was watching our children suffer for her choices. A week after leaving, I drove to the house to pick up Camila and Henry for their soccer games. Sandra had agreed to the visit. probably hoping it would make her look cooperative for any potential court proceedings. Henry ran to me the moment I pulled into the driveway, his 11-year-old face lighting up with relief. "Dad, are you coming home now?" he asked, wrapping his arms around my waist. "Not yet, buddy," I said, my heart breaking. "But I'm here for your game today." Camila emerged more slowly, her 13-year-old eyes holding a maturity that shouldn't exist at her age. She'd been through enough trauma before we adopted her, and now she was living through family destruction again. "Is this because of Mom's friend?" Camila asked quietly as we drove to the soccer field. I gripped the steering wheel tighter. "What do you mean, sweetheart?" "The man who calls her all the time." "Henry and I aren't stupid, Dad. We know something's wrong." At the soccer field, I sat in the bleachers, feeling like every other parent was staring at me, the man whose wife was having an affair. But watching Henry score 2 goals and seeing Camila's team win their match reminded me what really mattered. These kids needed stability, and Sandra had shattered that. After the games, I took them for ice cream. Henry chattered about school and friends, trying to maintain normalcy, but Camila was quiet, picking at her sundae. "Dad, are you and Mom getting divorced?" she finally asked. "I don't know yet," I answered honestly. "But I need you to understand something important. Whatever happens between your mom and me, you and Henry are my children forever. The adoption papers don't change that, and nobody can take that away from us." Camila's eyes filled with tears. "Promise." "I promise." When I dropped them back at the house, Sandra was waiting on the porch. She looked tired, older somehow, as if the weight of her lies was finally catching up to her. "How were the games?" Sandra asked, her voice carefully neutral. "Henry scored twice. Camila's team won," I replied, not getting out of the truck. "Daniel, we need to talk about the kids. They're confused, asking questions I don't know how to answer." "Maybe you should have thought about that before you started lying to them for 6 months, I said. Sandra's face flushed. "You're poisoning them against me." "I haven't said a word against you to those kids," I replied firmly. "But I won't lie to them either. They're smart enough to figure out that something's wrong when their mother destroys their family." "I didn't destroy anything," Sandra snapped. "You're the one who left." "I left a lie," I said. "You destroyed the truth." As I drove away, I saw Henry and Camila watching from their bedroom windows. 2 kids who'd already lost one family, now watching their second family fall apart because their adoptive mother couldn't stay faithful to the man who gave them a home. That night, Vernon found me on his back porch, staring at the stars. "You know what the hardest part is?" I said without looking at him. "What's that?" "Those kids have been abandoned before. Camila and Henry know what it feels like to have adults give up on them. And now Sandra is showing them it can happen again." Vernon sat down beside me. "But you're not giving up on them." "No," I said firmly. "I'll fight for those kids until my last breath. Sandra made her choice, but she doesn't get to take my children away from me." 2 weeks after leaving home, I decided it was time to meet the man who'd helped destroy my family. Mike Torres had provided Colin Reed's workplace address, a marketing firm downtown where he worked as a junior account executive. 29 years old, unmarried, living in a trendy apartment his salary couldn't possibly afford. I waited in the parking garage of his office building until 5:30 p.m. When Colin emerged from the elevator, I recognized him immediately from the photos Mike had taken. Tall, athletic, wearing an expensive suit that screamed, "Trying too hard." He looked exactly like what a 44-year-old married woman might find exciting. Young, confident, and completely unaware of the destruction he'd caused. "Colin Reed," I called out as he approached a silver BMW. He turned, and I saw the exact moment recognition hit his face. His confidence evaporated, replaced by the look of a man who knew he'd been caught. "You must be Daniel," Colin said, attempting to maintain composure. "I'm sure she told you about me," I replied, walking closer. "What exactly did she tell you? That I was a workaholic who didn't appreciate her? That our marriage was already over?" Colin shifted uncomfortably. "Look, man, I didn't plan for this to happen. Sandra and I just connected. You know, sometimes these things are bigger than—" "Stop," I said firmly. "You're 29 years old. You knew exactly what you were doing when you started pursuing a married woman with 4 children. She said you two were basically separated," Colin protested weakly. "We were sleeping in the same bed every night until 2 weeks ago," I said. "Does that sound separated to you?" Colin looked away, unable to meet my eyes. I care about Sandra. This isn't just some fling. You care about her so much that you helped her steal from her children's college funds. I asked, because that's what those expensive dinners and hotel rooms cost. My kid's future. His face went pale. I didn't know about any of that. Now you do, I said. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to end this relationship immediately. You're going to stop taking her calls, stop meeting her, and disappear from her life completely. You can't tell me what to do, Collins said, but his voice lacked conviction. Actually, I can, I replied calmly. Because if you don't, I'm going to make sure your employer knows about your relationship with a married client. I'm going to make sure your parents know what kind of man they raised. And I'm going to make sure every mutual friend Sandra has knows exactly how their affair started and what it's cost my children. Collins stared at me for a long moment. Sandra said you were reasonable, that you'd understand eventually. Sandra says a lot of things, I said. Most of them are lies. But here's the truth. You helped destroy a family. For kids are crying themselves to sleep because their mother chose you over them. That's your legacy, Colin. That's what you should be proud of. I started to walk away but stopped. Oh, and Colin, if you really care about Sandra, you'd want her to fix her relationship with her children instead of running away with someone young enough to be your son. Driving back to Vernon's, I felt something I hadn't experienced in weeks. Control. I couldn't fix my marriage. I couldn't undo Sandra's betrayal. But I could make sure the other man understood the real cost of his actions. 3 weeks into the separation, Patricia Walsh called with news that changed everything. The financial audit was complete, and Sandra's misconduct was worse than we'd initially discovered. Daniel, she's been systematically draining your accounts for 8 months, not 6, Patricia said during our meeting. We're talking about nearly $70,000 in marital assets used to fund this affair. $70,000. I felt sick. That's more than Ellie's entire college fund. It gets worse. She's also been forging your signature on business loan applications. There are 3 separate loans totaling $45,000 that you supposedly co-signed but never saw. I stood up and walked to Patricia's office window, trying to process the magnitude of Sandra's betrayal. She's been stealing from me for months. The good news is this gives us tremendous leverage in custody proceedings, Patricia continued. No judge will award primary custody to someone who's been embezzling from their children's education funds. What about the business? Kane Construction remains yours. Sandra has no legal claim to it since it was established before your marriage, and she's never been an official partner. However, she might try to claim spousal support based on her contributions over the years. That afternoon, I met with my accountant, James Murphy, to assess the financial damage. We spent 3 hours going through bank statements, credit card records, and business accounts. Daniel, I have to ask, how did you not notice these withdrawals? James said, spreading documents across his desk. Sandra handled all our personal finances, I admitted. I focused on the business side. She managed household accounts. I trusted her completely. That trust cost you dearly. Look at this pattern. Every Tuesday and Thursday for months, $500 cash withdrawals. Always from the same ATM near the Marriott downtown. The evidence was overwhelming. Sandra hadn't just betrayed me emotionally. She'd been systematically stealing from our family's future to fund her affair with Colin. My phone rang. Asher's name appeared on the screen. Dad, you need to know something, Asher said urgently. Mom's been talking to a lawyer. I heard her on the phone saying she's going to fight for the house and half the business. What else did you hear? She told the lawyer that you abandoned the family and that she's been supporting the household financially while you focused only on work. Dad, that's not true, is it? No, son. It's not true. Your mother has been stealing money from our accounts to spend on her boyfriend. I have proof. This is so messed up, Asher said, his voice breaking. Why would you do this to us? I don't know, Asher, but I promise you this. I'm going to fight to protect you kids and make sure you can still go to college. That evening, Vernon found me in his garage, aggressively working on an old engine he'd been restoring. You're going to strip those bolts if you keep going like that, Vernon said. She's been stealing from my kids, I said, not looking up from the engine. For months. While I was working 16-hour days to build a future for our family, she was stealing that future to buy gifts for her boyfriend. What's your lawyer say? That will win. But winning doesn't give me back the money she stole, doesn't give me back the trust, doesn't give my kids back their intact family. Vernon sat down on a workbench. You know what Dad would say? What? That sometimes you have to tear something down completely before you can build it back up stronger. Maybe that's what's happening here. I looked at my brother, this man who'd stood by me through everything. I'm scared, Vernon. Scared of losing my kids. Scared of starting over at 45. Scared that I'll never trust anyone again. You won't lose those kids, Vernon said firmly. They're smart enough to see who the real parent is. And as for starting over, hell, Daniel, you built a successful business from nothing once. You can do it again. That night, I made a decision. I wasn't just going to survive Sandra's betrayal. I was going to use it as motivation to build something better for my kids, for myself, and for the future. I was determined to create without her. 6 months after leaving Sandra, we finally had our day in family court. Judge Margaret Harrison presided over what would determine the custody of my children and the division of our assets. Sandra sat across the courtroom with her attorney, looking composed but pale. Patricia Walsh had prepared meticulously. We had bank records, hotel receipts, forged loan documents, and Mike Torres's surveillance evidence. Most importantly, we had testimony from Ellie and Asher, both old enough to speak for themselves about which parent they wanted to live with. Your Honor, Patricia began. The evidence shows a pattern of financial misconduct spanning 8 months. Mrs. Kane systematically embezzled nearly $70,000 in marital assets to fund an extramarital affair. Sandra's attorney, David Miller, tried to paint me as an absent workaholic who'd driven his wife to seek emotional connection elsewhere. But when Patricia presented the forged loan documents, even Miller looked shocked. Mrs. Kane, Judge Harrison said sternly, did you forge your husband's signature on these loan applications? Sandra's composure finally broke. I needed money for household expenses, she said. Daniel was always working, never available to sign papers. These loans totaled $45,000, the judge continued. That hardly constitutes household expenses. The turning point came when Ellie took the stand. My 18-year-old daughter spoke clearly and confidently. Your Honor, my father's always put our family first. He worked long hours to provide for us, including my college tuition. My mother's actions have hurt all of us, especially Camila and Henry, who've already been through one family breakup. When Asher testified that he'd witnessed Sandra planning to continue the affair, Sandra began crying openly. Judge Harrison's ruling was swift and decisive. Given the evidence of financial misconduct and the testimony of the older children, I'm awarding primary custody to Mr. Kane. Mrs. Kane will have supervised visitation until she completes financial counseling and therapy. Regarding assets, Sandra will receive minimal spousal support and no claim to Kane Construction. The stolen money will be repaid through her share of the house sale. Outside the courthouse, Patricia smiled grimly. Daniel, you won everything that mattered. Your children, your business, your future. As we walked to my truck, I saw Sandra standing alone by her car. Colin was nowhere to be seen. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Then I remembered Camila's tears and Henry's confusion, and any sympathy disappeared. That evening, I picked up all 4 children from Sandra's house for the last time. They were moving in with me permanently, and we were starting fresh in a new house across town. Dad, Henry said as we drove away, are we going to be okay? We're going to be better than okay, buddy, I replied, watching Sandra's figure shrink in the rearview mirror. We're going to be a real family again. 1 year later, I stood in the kitchen of our new house, making pancakes for my 4 children on a Saturday morning. Kane Construction had not only survived Sandra's attempts at sabotage, but had grown stronger. Word had spread about my integrity during the divorce proceedings, and several new clients had specifically sought us out. Ellie was thriving at Michigan State, calling weekly to check on her siblings. Asher had received a full football scholarship to Central Michigan. Most importantly, Camila and Henry had adjusted well to our new life, their trust and family stability slowly rebuilding. Dad, when's Uncle Vernon coming over? Camila asked, setting the table. Around noon, I replied. He's bringing his famous chili for the game. The doorbell rang, and Henry ran to answer it. I heard unfamiliar voices and walked to the front door to find Henry talking to a woman about my age with kind eyes and a warm smile. I'm sorry to bother you, she said. I'm Rebecca Martinez. My son plays on Henry's baseball team, and he left his glove in our car after practice yesterday. Oh, You're Tommy's mom, I said, taking the glove. Henry's mentioned Tommy quite a bit. He's mentioned Henry, too, Rebecca smiled. Says he's the best shortstop in the league. As Henry ran off with his glove, Rebecca and I stood talking for a few minutes about her kids, the team, and life in general. She was recently divorced, worked as a nurse at the children's hospital, and had the same weary but hopeful look I'd seen in my own mirror. Maybe we could grab coffee sometime, I found myself saying. If you're interested in adult, dull conversation that doesn't involve baseball statistics. Rebecca laughed. I like that very much. After she left, Camila appeared beside me with a knowing smile. She seems nice, Dad. She does, I agreed. But we're taking things very slowly. You kids are my priority. We know that, Camila said, hugging my arm. But it's okay if you're happy too. That afternoon, as I watched the football game with Vernon and my kids, I reflected on how much had changed. Sandra's betrayal had nearly destroyed us. But in rebuilding, we'd become stronger than before. The children were more resilient. Our bond was deeper, and I'd learned to trust my instincts again. My phone buzzed with a text from Rebecca. Coffee Tuesday at 10 o'clock. There's a place near the hospital that makes excellent pancakes. I typed back, looking forward to it. New friend? Vernon asked, noticing my smile. Maybe, I said. But first and always, I'm a father. Everything else comes second. Vernon raised his beard to second chances and doing things right the second time around. To family, I corrected, looking at my children, the one that matters and the one we choose to build. As the sun set through our living room windows, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years, genuine contentment. Sandra had tried to destroy our family, but instead she'd freed us to become the people we were meant to be. And that, I realized, was the greatest gift she could have given us.